personal journey comes to an especially vigorous expression and is visible in almost everything they wrote. Because it was forged in the context of apologetic dispute, Augustine's doctrine of creation has a kind of philosophical flair, rather than being strictly exegetically or pastorally driven. Even his exegetical works devote considerable space and energy to digressions concerning the origin of the soul, or the nature of memory, or various Manichaean views. Thus, in engaging Augustine's doctrine of creation, we gather a sense of how Christianity as a whole made sense to him, how it was better than its rival intellectual and religious systems at providing an explanation for the complexity of the world, the intensity of the contest between good and evil, and the strange longings of the human soul. Augustine's doctrine of creation was recognized as authoritative in his own lifetime. When Jerome was asked a question about the origins of the soul, his response enumerated 5 possible answers, but he ultimately commended his reader to go to the holy and learned man Bishop Augustine, who could teach you viva voce, as they say, and explain his own view, and in fact, our view, by himself. Jerome's own occasional differences with Augustine on this point make his deference to him in this context all the more revealing. In the modern era as well, interpreters of Augustine have detected the relevance of his work to science-faith issues. Galileo Galilei, for instance, quoted from Augustine's commentary on Genesis over 10 times in defense of his theories. Nonetheless, for all its significance, the doctrine of creation is not one of the better-known aspects of Augustine's theology. As N. Joseph Torquia notes, despite the seeming inexhaustiveness of investigations into the life and work of St. Augustine of Hippo, his theology of creation remains a relatively neglected area of his thought. Moreover, when Augustine's doctrine of creation is engaged, it is often pressed into the service of a particular contemporary concern or ideology. Occasionally, this leads to a certain distortion of Augustine's views, such that one can find his name simultaneously called down on opposite sides of various debates. Already in the 1920s, Henry Woods could lament the association of Augustine's conception of rationes seminales with Darwin's theory of biological evolution, and in recent years, Alistair McGrath has appropriated Augustine's thought to provide a theological framework for engaging modern science, especially evolutionary theory. In the other direction, young Earth creationists balk at any association of Augustine with the Earth being millions of years old, and are eager to claim his legacy as their own. In addition to these difficulties, there stands the more general challenge of the persistence of certain unfavorable representations of Augustine's thought and personality in popular impression, and occasionally in academic portrait. Perhaps because his influence on Christianity and Western culture has been so far-reaching, he is sometimes read through the lens of that real or perceived influence. His reputation has been accordingly controversial. Rowan Williams, for instance, references the wide array of clichés about Augustine's alleged responsibility for Western Christianity's supposed obsession with the evils of bodily existence or sexuality, or its detachment from the world of public ethics, or its excessively philosophical understanding of God's unity, or whatever else is seen as the root of all theological evils. Some of these views will be addressed throughout this book, as they impinge materially on the topics covered, especially those that tend to border on caricature. For instance, Colin Gunton's critique of Augustine as the progenitor of all the dreadful monisms that have deteriorated modern Western civilization. For the greater part, I hope that simply making fresh contact with Augustine will weaken or overturn many of the various unhappy Augustinianisms that continuously crop up in historical texts. For those who have only encountered Augustine indirectly, the mere experience of a careful reading of his actual writings is often enough to temper the popular image of a hardened defender of orthodoxy with the realization of a generous, expansive thinker of immense feeling. Retrieving premodern sources for modern struggles. But why should we engage Augustine in the first place? The fact that Augustine cared deeply about creation need not entail that we who are interested in creation should care about him.